When we left off in part 2, we were discussing meiosis. Now remember, meiosis is the way to reproduce sexually. We're making gametes, these sex cells that combine together during fertilization to make a new organism that has a mix of DNA from both parents. So we're looking at a parent cell and we're looking how it forms that gamete, like a sperm or egg. And the normal parent cell, that's just like the somatic other body cells, has one copy of each chromosome, one from mom and one from dad. And then, during interphase, we double the DNA. We make a copy of each chromosome. They're attached to the centromeres. So meiosis has two parts. Meiosis 1, and what happens there is you've got these homologous chromosomes, moms and dads there, the same chromosome with different versions, and during meiosis 1, those separate. So after meiosis 1, we've got two new cells. These are daughter cells that are non-identical to the parents. They're diploid, they have two copies of each chromosome, but for the most part, their two copies are the same. So then during meiosis 2, we don't make a second copy of the DNA, and this time we separate out so that our new daughter cells, there are 4 non-identical cells with one copy of each chromosomes. So in humans, if this was sperm, each of these cells would become a sperm cell. If they were eggs, only one of these 4 would become an egg. And what's neat is in humans, you've already started meiosis on all the female eggs that are going to start before birth. They get to a point and then stop, and then during puberty, they go through the rest of these steps during ovulation. So in meiosis, we end up with 4 non-identical haploid cells with only one copy of each chromosome. And what's really neat is that crossover can occur. So even though these two both have the yellow chromosome, they aren't generally completely identical. Crossover happens when the homologous chromosomes are touching, and then part of each chromosome gets switched. So then at the end, you'll have one chromosome that's all red, one that's mostly red with some blue, one that's mostly blue with some red, and then an all blue. So they're all different. So meiosis 1, we separate out the homologous chromosomes. You can have some crossover occurring. And then meiosis 2, we separate the sister chromatids, the same copies of the chromosome, except they can have some crossover. And then the results are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 different cells. So let's review that again. Mitosis, we're making identical copies. Meiosis, we're making sex cells. So before either of these start, during interphase, the non-division phase, you copy the DNA. Mitosis does one cell division and makes 2 exact copies that are diploid. They have 2 copies of each chromosome, like our normal body cells. Meiosis does 2 divisions, and in the end you have 4 non-identical haploid cells with only 1 copy of each chromosome. So this is a really nice picture to review with. Mitosis, you go interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Meiosis, you have a prophase through telophase 1, and then a prophase through telophase 2. 2N, diploid, exact identical copies, exactly the same as the parent cell. 4 non-identical cells, all different from the parent cell, all haploid. They're only 1N. So if you had any one of these cells go into fertilization, they would all produce different offspring. So offspring, if you didn't see that one, it's right here, can be variable. They're different from each other. They're different but related to their parents. And because of this variability, some can be more successful than others. For example, this spotted pattern on the one offspring could help it blend in better, or this could help it blend in better, depending on the environment. That's where natural selection would come in. The independent assortment of chromosomes theory states that picking which homologous chromosome goes to which new cell during meiosis is random. So if you had, your 22 autosomal normal chromosomes, there's equal chance that mom's chromosome versus dad's would go to each new cell. They all go independently. There's a 50-50 chance for each of them. So this shows different possibilities where you've got on this side, you've got a 50-50 chance that the blue from each side will go over to the same cell or opposite. And this shows same, that goes opposite. All equally likely. This randomness, this variability, helps increase the amount of possible variation that the offspring of sexual reproduction can have. So this shows, for example, Mendel, we'll look at him next time, looked at pea plants and their genetics. And because you can have all sorts of different traits get passed on, this shows a couple different traits and what the variation in offspring could look like. So we discussed crossover a little bit, and that's where you've got the homologous chromosomes, like mom and dad's, set up next to each other during meiosis 1. And then there you can have some crossover occur. Parts of the genes from one chromosome can get exchanged with the other. So then genetic recombination means all the different combinations that you can have sent from parents to offspring. Some traits are what are called linked. What that means is that they're on the same chromosome at about the same point. So that means that it's very unlikely that they'll get separated during crossover. So light hair, light colored eyes, dark hair, dark colored eyes are linked. Generally, they stay together. So this shows a really nice picture of crossover. So we've got our homologous chromosomes. We're going into meiosis to make sex cells, and we've doubled our DNA. So during the first meiosis, these line up in the middle during metaphase. They cross over, and they can exchange material. And then during anaphase there, it pulls the blue one way and the red the other, except they've exchanged some DNA. And then after meiosis 2, you pull apart each of these, and then you've got the 4 different possible options. And those are the recombinant, where you've got part of the DNA from one chromosome mixed with the other. Meiosis doesn't always go well. There can be errors that occur during this time, and the mistakes oftentimes are fatal. Sometimes the results aren't very poor, but most of the time they're quite bad. The first thing that can occur is non-disjunction. So there you don't have chromosomes separating properly, so your offspring will have the wrong number of chromosomes. They'd either have one too many or one too few. Almost all the time this is fatal. If you get 3 copies of a chromosome, that during development the zygote will be aborted. Here's non-disjunction, showing a couple ways that it can occur. It can either occur in meiosis 1 or meiosis 2. Depending on which it occurs at, you might have some that are normal, or they'll all be messed up. So this shows an egg with an extra copy of a chromosome, so then they would be called diploid plus 1 extra. 2 copies of each chromosome plus 1. Down syndrome is the only non-disjunction that is non-lethal other than with our sex chromosomes. So in this case, what happens during Down syndrome is you've got an extra copy of chromosome 21. So here's the trisomy, you've got 3 copies, there's an extra. There are also sex chromosome abnormalities. So Klinefelter syndrome, you've got an extra X. That's an example of an individual with Klinefelters. They've got small testes, a little bit of female type pubic hair, some breast development. They're taller than general feminine averages. And then you've got, for example, Turner syndrome, where you only have one X, and they'll generally be shorter in stature than average and be infertile. Most of the time, these individuals would be infertile. So let's review what the advantages of a sex are. You have to find a mate. It takes more energy to make all of these possible sex cells, but it carries an evolutionary advantage when you're getting variability in offspring. So asexual, you can also have the advantage if plants are widely distributed, you're not likely to find a partner, or they're really suited to a stable environment. They are doing the best that an individual possibly can be in that environment. There's no need to change anything. Asexual also helps by you don't need to form gametes, so you're expending less energy there, and you're not wasting time finding a partner, copulating with them. Oftentimes that makes animals vulnerable when they're fertilizing eggs. So an example of asexual production that can be really beneficial, strawberries. So strawberry plants, we've got some in my garden right now, they send out runners, and those are asexual identical copies. They are making seeds with the strawberries, but think about how much energy that puts in. So here they're able to make and expand from their area without going through all this work. But that work can be an advantage because it gives them variation, so they might be able to work in a changing environment. And it's not forward thinking. It doesn't say, hey, it's getting colder, I should be more cold tolerant. But if that's what it happens, it'll be selected for. It also allows a population to more easily get rid of harmful genes. If you've got a mutation that occurs that's very non-beneficial, some of your offspring won't get it, and they can be better suited for their environment. There are some animals that change their mode of reproduction based on their environment. So like snails are hermaphrodites. They can either mate with a mate or they can reproduce asexually. And they looked at snails in a couple of different environments. One, there was a pond where they were outside of it, just nothing big going on, no real changes, and those reproduced asexually. In the other population, there were parasites. Those individuals reproduce sexually, so hopefully some of their offspring would be better suited against the parasites and be more successful, send out more of their genes, be fitter. That's the end of chapter 8. Hopefully by the end of this, you can understand asexual versus sexual reproduction, the steps of mitosis and meiosis, and why we do each. What are the benefits of asexual versus sexual reproduction? How individuals like those snails could change based on their environment and why that would be beneficial. If you're having trouble understanding mitosis meiosis, I would recommend watching some more videos on it. You'll see some in your homework, but it never hurts to look at other visual representations of that to really strengthen your understanding.